Hey folks, welcome back. This is Chris in central Pennsylvania, and let's for a moment assume that maybe Trump just got it wrong. Maybe there is no expropriation without compensation. I mean, after all, it's just a name, right? Without compensation. So that must mean that there must be compensation for it. So what do we get wrong here? Are we reading the act incorrectly? Does nil not mean zero? Can the government take your property after demanding it and you refuse? That you won't take their offer, and they can then not go to a court and get the court to give it to them, or not go to an arbitrator and get the arbitrator to give it to them at their discretion? Did we miss something here? What are we missing about expropriation without compensation that's so confusing? Because apparently, according to Agri-SA, the DA, the ANC, and the media in South Africa, Trump just doesn't understand. He just doesn't understand. You can see there's a train behind me there. Our trains work here in America. The most efficient freight rail system in the entire world, right there. Right there, going right on by. How awesome is that? When the rails are working, communications lines are there, no one's tearing up the ties, and the trains flow. Unlike South Africa, our trains are still working. At least our freight rail. Europeans have us on passenger rail, but it's a big country. It's a little too far apart to have a sufficient and efficient passenger rail service. But back to this question about what's going on with expropriation. Maybe we are just missing something here. I mean, after all, it's just words, right? I paused it, but the train just keeps on going. It's still coming. It's been going for a couple minutes here, still going by. I don't think you want to see all of the train going by. Or maybe you do. Wow. Things used to work like this in South Africa. Not anymore. Even empty rail cars. All right, you get the picture. We'll come back. Finally, the end of that train. There it is, right there. Woo! Now all the traffic's backed up on this country road. So let's assume that we're just getting it wrong. What's the deal with expropriation without compensation? Well, let me ask this question. Why is the law necessary? What was not happening? The argument is that, well, there wasn't enough transformation. What does transformation mean? Taking land from lawful landowners and giving to people based on skin pigmentation on the argument that they were cheated out of land. Except there is no one that's been cheated out of land. The only argument there is based on skin color. Skin color doesn't entitle you to land. And having lost a battle 250 years ago, or having been wiped out by a plague 500 years ago, doesn't entitle people who've descended from that group of people to own land. Otherwise, I'd own half of Ireland, and I'd own all of Frisia and northern Germany. That would be mine. It's a silly argument. But let's go back to this. So let's allow for the fact that land can be expropriated without compensation. Why, as I asked? What's not being done? Has the government been unable to expropriate property or to buy property for the benefit of people who've been historically disadvantaged? Well, in fact, it has it not? Ask the government this question. Ask the media this question. Ask the social media glitterati clowns this question. Has the government of South Africa been prevented from buying land for poor black South Africans? And the answer is no. In fact, the government has purchased 3.9 million hectares of land. And they're also the country's largest landholder. So they've got land coming out their backside. So why isn't this land being distributed? Well, some of it has been distributed. And we've seen the Daily Maverick, what happens to that land. Some of it's used wisely, but most of it goes fallow or sold, or it just falls apart because the people aren't prepared, they aren't trained, they aren't equipped, they have no experience, and the government does nothing to help them. No extension services, no credit, no equipment, no tractors, no plows, nothing. No fertilizer. And so it all falls apart. And look no further than KwaZulu-Natal. The Don Valley farm and the Ponderosa farm, both purchased by the government and completely destroyed years later. Nothing left of them. So why does the government need to expropriate land without compensation when it's acquired 3.9 million hectares of land? Is there land that they must have for public purpose that they cannot acquire? Well, they're not answering that question. And why is it? Because this is a power grab. This has very little to do with land, ladies and gentlemen. I've told people this over and over and over and over again. Please listen to what I'm saying. This is an abusive government that is using the law to take property from people. Section 25 of the South African Constitution clearly says that property is not just land. It's not exclusively land. It could be your pension funds, it could be your property, it could be your vehicles, it could be your jewelry, it could be your Krugerrands, it could be your pension, and that's what you need to watch out for. So ask them this question. Why do you need this? Why do you need expropriation without compensation? You've been buying land and you've been distributing some of it. What's the problem? Disused land. Really? Well, why don't you buy the disused land instead of stealing it? Ask them that question. None of them can answer that question because it's not about taking care of historically disadvantaged people. It's not about South Africa's black population. No siree. It's about destroying one group of people and enriching another group of people. And that's the bottom line. What say you, South Africa? Thanks for tuning in. Cheers.